Greetings, everybody. It is GleeCon back again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft coming at you one more time. On our last episode, we ran through our first classic instance, which is Ragefire Chasm, and it was more or less successful. I did have a death like a noob there, made a pretty dumb mistake, just not familiar with the classic dungeons as of right now. It could have gone worse, could have gone a lot better. So we did learn from a lore perspective that the Searing Blade, the branch of the Burning Blade that's right underneath Orgrimmar, they are kind of greatly crippled now because of us, and I don't think they'll ever resume any kind of power, and we've really messed with Niru Fireblade. We've also been reading through the Horde Player's Guide, which is a book in the Dungeons & Dragons source material that we're almost done with. We've got a couple episodes, a couple chapters left. We're going to do one of them today, so stay a while and listen as we do the penultimate chapter, which is chapter 9. This is a bestiary. It's called Creatures. And if you look at the kind of beginning text here where it says a Horde bestiary, it says, hey, the Horde makes use of many creatures. Some are intelligent, some are friends, some are beasts of burdens, some are mounts, some are all of the above. They all go to war with the Horde. But it says, hey, a lot of these are in class options and in Land of Mystery. Some in this book, some in another book. Some of them are in the Monsters Guide, and some of them are in the Alliance Player's Guide as well. So we have a lot of overlap, so we're really just going to gloss over because some of this we've done before. So we're going to read the flavor text and maybe glance over the descriptions, and that's about it. Okay, we're going to begin with abominations. These are challenge rating 15. This creature is a mound of corpses cobbled together. Its stomach-churning reek is choking, and a green-brown haze surrounds it. Its guts spill from a jagged gap in its stomach, and flies buzz about it, feasting. 3 disproportionate arm-like limbs emerge from its bloated body, 2 bearing bloody cleavers, and the other a thick chain with a hook at the end. Its tongue is thick and round and dangles from between crooked yellow teeth. So they are the monstrosities created by like Frankensteining a bunch of monsters together. They're slow, they're dumb, they're tough, they're strong, and they work for the Forsaken. They're surrounded by disease clouds. And we know they also guard the Undercity. And the Scourge use them too. In combat, they use their spike chains like hooks. They exude their rot around them. And with their weapons, they also have a rot cloud. They can cannibalize the enemies around them as well. And that's about all you need to know. Okay, similarly on that Forsaken beat here, we have the Banshee. These are challenge rating 12, so they're a little weaker. The Spectral Elf is beautiful but terrible. Her face is stretched in an expression of madness, misery, and rage. Her mouth drops open as she lets out a moan that reverberates and wavers strangely. It grates on the ears and stabs the mind. These also, we know from Warcraft 3 as well, they were once elf women. Now they're intangible spectral creatures with spell-like abilities. It does say that when the Burning Legion and Kaldorei clashed in the War of the Ancients 10,000 years ago, many Night Elf women fell, and their brutal murderers returned them as banshees. For millennia, they wandered the world in lamentation, losing ever more of their dwindling sanity until eventually the Lich King learned of their existence and recruited them into the Scourge. The most famous banshee is Ranger General Sylvanas Windrunner, but now she's a little something else, as we know. So they can take possession. We know that from Warcraft 3. It's pretty awesome. They have spells, a curse, and an anti-magic shell specifically, and they exude an unnatural aura that is sort of like a fear-based aura. All right, bats. Now there are 3 varieties. There are the normal, tiny little bats that fly around the world. There are the giant bats. We fight many of them, and even bigger, the vampire bats. They're small. I guess the regular bats are small creatures that flitter past you on leathery wings, hunting for bugs that are just nocturnal animals. They have blind sense, and they give a little wounding bite. I guess it just does a little bit of bleed damage, basically. They have a dot. The bigger bats would just be bigger versions of that with a keen scent, and they also can be used as scouts, but vampire bats can be used as mounts, specifically by the Zulamani. We know that they're in the Undercity as well. Okay, there's also Centaur. We know that these are marked as playable character race in Dungeons & Dragons. They're only challenge rating 3. A great creature charges through the plain snarling a challenge. He has the upper torso, arms, and head of a wild and savage human, emerging from where the head and neck of a great warhorse would be. He bears a massive axe in his hands, as we see there, with an equally massive bow hanging from his back. So the Night Elves claim that these guys are the bastard children of Cenarius. We know they have quite the history with Remulos and some of the things happening there when we read the chronicles about the Deathless region. We don't know exactly how they have originated. At least at this point in time, again, we have a pretty solid origin story for them. Although there's more to it if you think about how prominent they are, even in the Dragon Isles. But they're definitely, in this, neutral at best, hostile usually. They are operating in tribes, and we've seen from playing Classic, they have little mud homes, little tents. They use weapons. They can also use like shaman type magic, and they're ruled by Khans. Says they're scattered across the Barrens. Again, we also know that they're in Deathless and other regions as well. There's some in Durotar. Before we continue talking about the Centaur, though, we have a little story. The ancient and wizened Tauren sat in front of the fire, warming his old bones. Around him sat several young calves, eager for their elder to begin storytelling. I like that young Tauren are called calves. One, however, was too impatient and asked a question of the elder. "Elder, what are centaur?" The old Tauren laughed and reached over to pat the young child. "This was told to me once by a wandering night elf long ago, little children. Long ago, the Kaldari god Cenarius bore 3 children, the centaur, the dryad, and the keeper of the grove. However, one son, the centaur, grew to despise his beautiful siblings, then all other creatures of the world, and challenged Cenarius. The centaur believed that he was the strongest of the 3 children, and that Cenarius refused to love him and instead doted on his other children. In embracing his hatred and savagery, he struck his father in a blind rage, tried to force his father to love him above all other creatures. In retort, the god cursed the centaur, stripping him of his beauty and powers, leaving him only with his hatred and anger. The centaur fled in rage and swore a blood feud on all the creatures of the world. He reserved most of his hatred for Cenarius' favored children, and thus the Night Elves drew his ire as well. We too drew his anger, as he was jealous of our strength and power with the world, the same power he lost. The children carry his anger and destroy everything they touch, bearing their father's hatred of all things of the world." The children nodded, then smiled as the elder turned the subject to something more pleasant. We don't get into a lot of them because they are extensively covered elsewhere. They are cool and vicious in combat. They can also use a lance that's basically treated as mounted combat, and they do have a touch with nature. So as we've seen that with the storm casters, whatever you want to call them, the shaman, whatever. All right, so Kodo, there are Kodo beasts, which you can fight out in the wild, which are big and bad, and then the riding Kodos, which are more like mounts. The ground trembles with each step that the massive reptilian beast takes. Its gray hide is covered in the dust that it kicks up as it grazes with a horned snout across the plains. Here's a picture of both. They're quadrupedal reptiles. I did not realize that Kodo were considered reptiles. That's interesting. They wander in herds. They also can be found, or they're similar in size and style, so they're like evolved from dinosaurs in Ungoro. They graze, so they're herbivorous. And they're key to the Tauren culture. They're a symbol of vigor and power. Their herds have mothers and young and a single powerful male or female. They also make a loud bellowing sound. In combat, they're usually pretty chill, unless they're protecting their eggs. Because I guess since they're reptiles, they lay eggs. That's so weird. I wonder if that's still considered canon. We also have another story from the Tauren shaman here. "The Kodo is our life, children," began the elder Tauren, smiling at the young faces that cross him in the firelight. "And in turn, our life is theirs. Long ago, the Tauren wandered Kalimdor lost and hungry, and they called the Earth Mother for respite. The world was new, just sundered, and the Tauren lost everything in the great quakes that followed. The Earth Mother granted their wishes and created the Kodo from her own strength and spirit. She came to us pained from the making and spoke unto us the following words. I have heard your pain, and I have felt it too. This world is new, but you shall never be alone. I give you the Kodo, and tie you to the great beasts as they are tied to you. The Kodo shall be your food, your friends, your shelter, and your power. As long as you respect the Kodo, honor the Kodo, and love the Kodo, it shall always be there for you. It's kind of like the buffalo in Native American history. She then sent the Kodo to wander the plains to test the power of the Tauran race and to prove her love for us. To this day, we still honor and protect the great beasts of the plains. The Kodo gives us everything we need: meat, clothing, weapons, armor, shelter. Nothing goes to waste. To do so would be to dishonor the Earth Mother's sacrifice. And still, we remember the great gift our mother gave unto us and offer our thanks in prayer. They have howdahs as well. A howdah is a cedar box with a canopy, basically, that sits on the back. Orc and Tauran built ornate and elaborate howdahs as symbols of prestige, or open-aired spiked ones for military applications. The Kodo have an improved grab, basically probably with a bite. They have a powerful charge. They can stampede or just straight up swallow whole. That's a callback to Warcraft 3. The mounts have basically the same thing. Okay, so cool. Now we have the ogres. We also know these as a race, a playable race. So just naturally, as a mob, they're challenge rating 3. This flabby humanoid is large and smooth-skinned. Its two heads stare down, one with an expression of anger, the other of confusion. A horn sprouts above a cyclopic eye on one head. The creature looks exceedingly stupid, but the way it hefts a massive club proves that it's still dangerous. So they're large, strong, stupid, lazy, and do a ton of damage. They're not indigenous to Azeroth. They do come from through the Dark Portal from Draenor. And they like lands that are sort of like it, Dire Maul, Badlands. In the Second War, some ogre chieftains rose to prominence, and that's because they were like a playable mob in the Second War. Recently, the Horde has half ogres such as Rexar, and they've been working with the Stonemaul clan, and we'll get to that when we get to those zones. Some two-headed ogres are natural currents. We also know that they can be made, as we'll read about in a second here with Ogre Magi. They have compound names, so Chokegall, actually, one is Cho and one is Gall. I didn't know that. They dwell in ogre mounds, big piles of rocks, and they're big. They love clobbering time and like to clobber. That's their preferred method. Okay, there are also ogre mages. The magi are intelligent and can wield spells. Gul'dan and his warlocks captured elven runestones at Caldero, if you remember from Warcraft 2, and that's how they were originally created. Although they're not really. That's how they created them en masse. They existed on Draenor. So those Altar of Storms make them now. They're less chaotic. They are smarter. And they are blue for whatever reason. And I don't think the blue part sticks. So it's more like a template. They are spellcasters. This gives them an example. They're challenge rating 9. They're significantly higher. They're more of the elites. And as a spellcaster, they're considered warlocks, although I would imagine they can be other things. Arcanists possibly as well. Maybe shaman. Why not? Okay, quill beasts. We have little quill beasts and big ones, basically dire. Challenge rating 3 and 6 respectively. The creature resembles a large boar, but it has a set of quills along its shoulders and back. So that would be maybe a little one. That's a dire one. And we also fight fell beasts, which are big ones on Draenor. Cross between a boar and a porcupine, and they're only in the Barrens. They have quills. They have the ferocity trait, which lets it continue fighting after death. The dire one is an immense boar the size of a small pony. Its tusks as big as swords. Literally hundreds of quills run along its shoulders and back, bristling with wild fury. Other than that, it's the same. Okay, raptors. These could be mounts. I don't know if they're going to include that. Yeah, they have raptor mounts. We also know there are big, giant ones in Ungoro Crater. This creature, in their challenge rating 3, is a man-sized reptile with wicked claws on its feet and a brightly striped hide. Its teeth and foreklaws look almost as savage, and a massive black horn extends from between its yellow eyes. They're native to the plains of Durotar. The Darkspear jungle trolls love them, and they have a variety of colors. It says their tail is big, and it weighs about 600 pounds. They use speed. Their forearms, they're jumping claws too, just like you see in like the first Jurassic Park. They can pounce. and they're good at jumping and scouting. And yeah, they can be used to mount. Takes a couple years. Okay, that's cool. Now, spirit beasts, these can be a variety of things. They come from the Emerald Dream, and I would argue that also you could extend that now to being in Shadowlands as well, particularly Ardenweald. So some examples are spirit wolves or shadow wolves. Spirit beasts are embodied spirits of the natural world. They're incorporeal, but we know that they can fight. They look like regular animals, but they're translucent with glowing auras. So there's a template we put on them. They do have a blink, which that tracks with Shadowlands and invisibility. A challenge rating 3 is a spirit wolf. Shadow wolves are a little bit stronger. The black wolf flickers and is almost translucent. A faint glow emanates from its body. This is what the shamans summon in Warcraft 3. Shadow wolves resemble a massive dire wolf. They're solid black and powerful. Their image is hazy and faintly glows. When it shows itself, they're basically more powerful. Thunder lizards, we fight these all over. These are kind of like a mixture between a Kodo and a Stegosaurus. Their challenge rating 8. The creature resembles a massive Kodo beast with 2 horns on its snout and a row of pointed plates down its back. Lightning flares from its eyes and the stench of burnt ozone hovers about the creature. The Tauren have tales of legendary Kodo beasts. Gifted by the spirits of the sky. These are known as thunder lizards or lightning lizards, and some people call them stormworms, which is actually what some of them are called in Durotar. They consider it a significant life event to encounter one of them, but it might be good or bad life event. They're heavily scaled. They're tougher than Kodo. They are cantankerous, not too bright, but they do a lot of the same things as Kodo do, just with lightning. Salamanders are very similar. I'm trying to think where we fight them. They must be somewhere in Classic, but they're basically fire versions of them. We'll keep our eyes peeled. They have a breath weapon. They have that bite, charge, and swallow hole. Okay, wolves. There are 3 versions, just like bats. They're the regular, the giant, and the dire. These can also be used as mounts. Challenge 1, 2, and 3, respectively. The fierce animal is a wild canine with a powerful set of jaws. Its hackles raise like a mane and its bushy tail twishes as it prepares to attack. Basically, they can appear anywhere that there are woods, from duskwood to... we fought a million already. Giant wolves are just bigger and stronger, and dire wolves are as tall as a man. It's a great wolf that has long tusk jaws that look like it could snap an iron bar with burning red eyes. They are basically what the orcs like to ride. Yeah, those are the mounts. Okay, wyverns, challenge rating 3. They've got some lore behind them as well. The Horde loves these guys. The creature looks much like a lion with great leathery wings that flare out from its forelimbs. It has strong hind legs and a scorpion-like tail. That's the callback to Dungeons and Dragons. So they live in the harsh cliffs of Kalimdor. They are intelligent. They're paired with hippogriffs. They prove themselves, the orcs prove themselves by trying to kill. Oh no, they prove themselves to the wyverns by killing harpies. I guess harpies are kind of predatory on the wyverns there. So the wyverns respect the Tauren and orcs and other races of the Horde, and that's why we can mount them. And they speak Orc and Tarahe. That's interesting. So they're actually intelligent. Yeah, they have an intelligence of 11. And this is it. They're the last creature that we have. Of course, they're good with aerial tactics, and they can be used as mounts. So, very cursory monsters manual kind of thing. We have one final chapter, which is going to give us 2 or 3 adventures that we'll also kind of blaze through. More focusing on the story-like elements. We don't necessarily need to know how to run the adventure, but these are always out there if you're ever interested in playing on your own. I'm not particularly, just because I don't like the Dungeons and Dragons era that this is from. I really, that edition and the next one I didn't really love, but the current iteration of D&D I like a lot. But hey everyone, we got another episode in the pipe 5x5, and as always, I thank you so much for watching, for listening. Maybe we learned a little bit, but this was just kind of like a recap as we get close to wrapping up the book. Either way, I will see you next time on Lore of Warcraft.